In our modern age of combat sports with MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, you'll often hear traditional martial arts referred to as being useless. Some people going even as far as to call them fake, that they wouldn't work in a real life situation if you needed to defend yourself in a fight. Traditional styles such as Aikido, Kung Fu, Karate, amongst others, have come under a lot of scrutiny for having techniques and practices that simply wouldn't be effective in a real world scenario. The definition of the word traditional is an adjective for describing something that is long-standing and has been passed down from generation to generation. But by this definition, certainly we could describe many of our beloved modern martial arts as being traditional. In an Egyptian burial chamber located in the tomb of Becket III, archaeologists have discovered a mural that depicts people wrestling, and this mural is dated back to as early as 2000 BC. Some of the images that were found could even be described as depicting BJJ or Sambo. So if the issue is not simply how old a martial art is, then what is it that defines an effective modern style as opposed to a traditional useless one? The reason this debate has heated up so much in recent years is largely down to the development of the sport of mixed martial arts. The original UFC 1 back in 1993 was largely designed around the idea that we would pit different martial arts styles against each other to see which one would come out on top. These included styles such as karate, taekwondo, even sumo, and as many of you know, this tournament was won by a traditional martial artist practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Royce Gracie, who introduced the world to the gentle art. Since that day, MMA as a sport has continued to grow and develop, with fighters now being experts in multiple disciplines, including grappling, wrestling, and striking. They've been able to hone their skills and test what works, what is effective, and what simply isn't. And here is where things really start to fall apart for many of the traditional styles that I listed at the beginning of this video. How many Aikido practitioners do you see in MMA? How many Kung Fu masters have made it to the UFC? The answer is not many, particularly when you compare it to how many Muay Thai, BJJ, and wrestling practitioners make up the roster of these larger MMA organizations. Now, this is not to say that there aren't some specialists whose origins can be rooted back to traditional styles. Take, for example, George St. Pierre, who was a karate black belt when he came into the UFC. The issue seems to go back to the wording with traditional. Many of these martial arts, what they seem to lack is a process of evolution. They can be so rooted in their traditional values that they contain themselves in a bubble and don't put themselves up against any active resistance. They often fail to question their teachings against new evidence that's been presented through the passage of time, thus have found themselves being left behind for styles that are more willing to evolve. Many traditional techniques can be found in modern fighting systems, so this is not to say that they are completely ineffective in combat, but to simply say that without live sparring and competition, a lot of these styles have not been shown their weaknesses and have not then been shown where they need to grow and change to develop for modern fighting. Take the earlier example of GSP and his karate background. His karate background would have for sure given him the ability to strike well on his feet. However, George developed an amazing ability to wrestle and take his opponents down to the ground. This is not something he would have learned in the karate dojo. He understood the limitations of his style and he learnt around it and extended his knowledge to be a more well-rounded fighter. Now, is any of this to say that traditional martial arts is pointless? That getting a black belt in karate and learning kata would be a waste of your time? No. Martial arts is far more than simply combat. It's a great way to stay fit. It can be a meditation. It's a good way to distill discipline in young children. Many martial artists practice purely for the sport of it. Take Taekwondo. Taekwondo is often criticized for being mostly showy techniques that wouldn't work in a real fight situation, that the combat is more like a game of tag. But I'd like to think that an open-minded Taekwondo practitioner would understand that this is a development of the sport as opposed to the art of combat. There's a difference between the sport of Taekwondo and combat involving striking. Taekwondo, of course, can be a great element to this. It has amazing kicking techniques and it teaches you a real understanding of distance and time management, elements that are essential to knowing how to fight on your feet. At the end of the day, I think all martial artists should be open to the limitations of their own style and practice. We should all make more effort to open our eyes to the bigger picture and not limit ourselves to our small bubble of specific beliefs. It's not a case of needing to change what you do, but instead changing your outlook so that you see each style for what it is. A Muay Thai fighter could be completely helpless on the ground. A BJJ practitioner would have real trouble fighting multiple opponents at one time. Neither of these styles are considered to be useless or fake martial arts, but both should have an understanding of their limitations. The world of martial arts is a big and beautiful one. The biggest mistake any practitioner can make is closing their eyes to half of it for the sake of protecting their own. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider hitting that like button. It really helps the channel to grow and develop. Subscribe to our channel. We've got new videos coming out every week, and I will see you on the next one.